For example, my affair took no longer, not even 7 months, right? And then yours, I think it was 3 months, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, dude, it was such a small amount of time because I didn't need much of the experience to prove to myself that the reality I had initially placed myself in, which was the marriage and the partner that I had, wasn't enough for me.
There you go. That was radical honesty. You were able to understand this, be curious about this, and then say, oh, this is what I want. And so I'm going to take action based on that. But if you're not able to be radically honest about what's going on, then you start making excuses, compartmentalizing. And yes, it starts becoming pathological and it'll take years. Not to say that, again, one affair is better than the other, but to live a life where you do compartmentalize a portion of your life where it's not public, it's shamed, it is logical in that way. It is not radical honesty with a full life, with a full lived life. Yeah.
And the thing is, like, most people inside of affairs that I've spoken with very much desire the fullness of life, and they feel hindered by the circumstance. And I think that when you feel that way, you are the one who has to determine your own path forward. And radical honesty doesn't require you to disclose to anybody else except for yourself.
Yes.
And that's the other thing. Telling someone your story doesn't necessarily mean you're honest. Like, being honest is that draw into sincere curiosity of, why do I feel this way? Mm-hmm. And what is this feeling? And what does this feeling mean to me? Not what is the definition, but like meaning, and being able to really uncover meaning in your own life. That was a really long-winded monologue on radical honesty. Doesn't demand
you put it really well.
You putting yourself in tricky waters.
Yeah. And why is it that people, going back to the triangle, where is it that when we enter an affair and spend 20 years, 10 years in an affair, saying that we want a full life, but still in it?
I have an idea, but it's also not for me to answer. It's for the person that's listening to answer. On today's episode, you and me are going to discuss the stuff that we've been talking about on Instagram. When did you come across this post?
Raquel's post, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a while, actually, because I have been consuming some of her content on and off. I think she's great. I think the way she's very articulate. I think the way she expresses it is it's a fresh narrative in the therapy world, because I do think, as she herself says, it's been saturated with this overly diagnosis focus, where people are overly diagnosed and overly labeled, and everybody's a narcissist or this or that. And they're stuck in these labels and not really doing what needs to be done, which is living a life and living it fully with somebody else, or having relationships in which you are going to have disappointment and you are going to have pain, and you'll have to deal with that, right? It's much easier to say, you're a narcissist, I'm a victim, or you're bipolar, I'm this and you're that. And this is how we all box ourselves, and we don't really negotiate our stances or our roles. So I thought it was a very fresh narrative. And so I started following her.
I remember in the community, one of the girls had written that she was with the same therapist for 11 years. And she was really concerned that it actually wasn't doing anything to change her situation. It was just keeping her in the same situation.
Yeah. And that might happen exactly because you're engaging from that same role all the time, right? Like that same narrative that reinforces the identity, whether it's I am the victim, right? Normally, if you're stuck, 99% of the time, it's because the narrative is I'm a victim, because victims can't do anything about nothing. You know what I'm saying? The victim cannot move forward. The world's against them. They are just completely paralyzed. So that's normally what happens.
And you know what? This conversation makes me wonder, does anybody ever lead a life where they don't experience being a victim?
No, I think it's a good question because I think we all experience being a victim at one point or another, or at least feel like a victim to a certain degree, because there is pain, like we were starting to talk, but to be stuck in victimhood, like to actually move in the neighborhood of victimization, right? To be stuck in it as a role, as an identity, that's a whole other choice. And it's one that actually takes effort and commitment because you really have to reinforce certain areas and certain beliefs. So I think we all feel attacked at a certain point. And I think that, and Raquel says this also at a certain point, she says, when you're a child, childhood is traumatic by definition. And it's true, because if there is a moment in time where you are vulnerable completely and you don't have autonomy, you don't have any choices, it is childhood. That's the nature of it, because you're completely dependent on other people normally, especially when you're very little. So if there's a victim in any place or time, it's really when you're a child. And that's where you bring that victimhood normally. Like it's the child in you that was a victim at some point in your past that you bring into when you're hurt, that you forget that you're an adult. Again, that there's this confusion. I'm still a child and people are still doing things to me. No, you're not. You forget that you have autonomy. You forget you have choice. So I think that's really bringing the adult again. And to stay stuck in that child, especially if therapy allows you to and to a certain degree in therapy, yes, you also nourish and you, what do you call it? Hold the child, your client's inner child. You hold them, but you can't just be stuck there. You can validate the child, but then, okay, we need the adult now. Bring him in or bring her in. Kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember pausing on one of her bits where it was like, validation without empowerment will keep you stuck.
Yeah.
And really following, ooh, that's painful, and then responding with something that is actually empowering to the person rather than just validating the pain that exists. But yeah, I really want to hear your thoughts on how people can go about acknowledging their pain without turning it into an identity.
I think one of the most important ways is that you need to be compassionate with yourself, that this pain is something real. It tells you something. It's something important for you to listen to, right? So this pain is an information. And it's a piece of information where I want to understand, like, what is it telling about me? Like, why is it that I'm suffering over a loss? And normally it's over a loss of something, right? So is it because I value my family? Is it because I value, again, in terms of infidelity, right? Is it because I value this relationship that I have with my husband? Is it because I value a dream? What is it that I'm painful about? And I think that's one of the ways that we start with autonomy and with protagonism, understanding that it's our pain to own. It's nobody else's. It's painful because it's important to me. Or else you wouldn't be painting. If some stranger said something like, oh, you have blue hair, you have green hair and you don't, right? And it's ugly, you wouldn't paint over that. You wouldn't think twice because it's A, not important to you, or two, it's not real. So it's, again, what narrative that I carry in my life that is threatened by it. And it's so interesting to see how people are triggered by random things and really how they respond to something completely in a tangent because they are threatened. Their narrative is threatened somehow of what they would like things to be, right? Which is another thing. Like, pain comes also when you realize that things are not like what you would like them to be. And if you get stuck in well, it should be that way, it should be that way, right? You're not going anywhere with that. So it's really letting that pain go through you and not making it even a manipulative tactic, right? I'm painting, I'm the victim, I'm entitled to something because you owe me something because you brought this pain to me, which is what we were talking about in the last podcast. Remember how, like, why people don't leave because of the kids? And really one of the main underlying fears is that the children will be weaponized, right? Like, the other parent will be so crazy or so out of control or so angry that he or she will attack me over and over again. So it's this idea again that why should he or she attack you? Because there's this narrative again, you're the villain and I'm the victim and you should pay. And that's it. But when we stop with that, either side of it, no, I don't accept that I'm the villain. Maybe I'm the villain in your story, but I'm not the villain in my story. So I don't act like one. I don't respond as one. I don't engage as one. It starts breaking that cycle because the triangle there that you were talking about.
Let's go down to this triangle really quick. And we might include this inside of the visual of the podcast. Can you tell the audience a little bit about these two triangles that are on the screen? What is it? Go ahead and describe like what the bottom triangle is and what the top triangle is.
The bottom triangle is what I call the dysfunctional triangle, right? It's where you get stuff where things are incredibly rigid and you really don't evolve in life. And it's where you have this triangle of hero, villain, and victim. And there exists the right and the wrong, the blame, and it's motivated by fear. I don't know if I've said this in one of your podcasts or not, but I do believe that I did say that there's only two primary emotions. It's either fear or love, meaning connection or disconnection. And this is the triangle that is based on and motivated by fear. Like, how do I protect myself? Not how do I connect? How do I protect myself? And if you're protecting yourself from what? From a villain. And then you have to have obviously a hero also in that story to either endorse you or to enable you.
Basically, if you are the victim, you will always be seeking villains and heroes in your story.
Correct.
Because you operate.
Where's you're the hero too, huh? There are people that are very addicted to being heroes.
Oh my God. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. It's not your responsibility. Oh no, I have to save her or rescue her kind of attitude. It's because you also see the world in terms of villain victim, because if you have to be the hero all the time, not the bad person sometimes, right? Which we've said, if you make adult choices in life, conscious and responsible of what those choices mean, like what the consequence minimal prices you have to pay, you will inevitably disappoint people, or you will hurt people, because you can't have it all the time. You can't have everybody happy about all your choices all the time. Not only talking about infidelity, anything. So when you're trying to please everybody and trying to be that hero all the time, you're also counting on somebody to be the victim and somebody to be the villain.
Okay. Yeah. So this is like the pattern of dysfunction outlined in roles that people assume actually exist. And then when we move up on this diagram, we have actual presence and people who are present in their own lives. And there's different identities that they take on.
Absolutely. I think,
tell me more.
More than identities, because I feel like the hero and the villain are very rigid identities. You can only be one thing. But I think with the upper triangle, you can be all three. You can move through that triangle, and that's the beauty of it. You can be a coach and you can be the challenger, and you can see yourself being the challenger, and you can see yourself being the creator. And none of this challenges or threatens, your sense of self or sense of ego, in the sense that you feel shame. There's no shame there. The red one, it's shame. Full of shame, right? We want to get away from shame, and we don't want to be the villain and the blame. Blaming is shaming. But there in the presence, you are fully present. You move through life on these three. You can be all three, and you are all three. One day you will be the coach and the facilitator, somebody that would be the hero, but in the good way, right? In the healthy way, in the sense of orienting or supporting. You can be the challenger. The challenger is the one that provokes. Yeah. So when you break somebody's heart, you're also a challenger. I said to one of my clients the other day, I felt bad because I disappointed him, she said. And I said, it seems like you feel like disappointment is a bad thing. Where did you pick that up? Like, where is it that we pick the disappointment is a bad thing?
Or do you trust them to be able to navigate disappointment?
Right.
Like, I always go back to that. I'm like, okay, so if everything is about the basis of trust, and you feel that what you're about to do, you're about to make an empowered decision on your own behalf because this is your own life, and you're refraining from doing it because it's going to disappoint somebody else. Do you not trust them to navigate disappointment? And that usually like wakes people up a bit like, oh yeah, I guess they can totally be disappointed, just like I can be disappointed.
Yeah.
It, presents
Capacity to
the,
navigate it. It's that, or else you're back in the hero seat. If you're saying, "Oh, I don't want to disappoint," you're back in the hero seat, which is just as
yeah,
toxic. I don't trust them, like you said. I don't trust them to be an adult. I have to rescue them. I can't disappoint. They can't handle disappointment. You're the challenger when you disappoint, or you're the challenger when you break their hearts. Yeah, you're the challenger in many ways. Not to say again that there might not be some responsibility related to that, but and then there's the creator, which exists exactly in the middle of that diagram.
yeah.
You can
That took
only
me a long time to wrap my head around, was that you could create the reality that you wanted if you claimed your personal power, which comes along with personal responsibility. And once you start to do that, you start to feel alive in your own freaking life. And it is incredible.
and owning your story. Because I had another case where there was also a person who was involved in an affair, and then, she discovered that he was having an affair with somebody else, or dating something else, was having an affair with multiple women.
She was under the guise of exclusivity.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, she was disappointed and all that. And then the thing was that she also saw herself in a situation where then their friends who didn't know about the affair knew about the other one and wanted to tell the wife. And she was caught in this moral dilemma. What do I do? Do I tell her? Do I not? Am I part of this? And digging deeper, what's your fear exactly? What is your fear? Like, how would you react if there was no fear? No, she said, it has nothing to do with me. And so again, what is your fear here? And the fear is that she was going to be put in this villain narrative, right? Because there was this villain already, the witch hunting, this other woman and him. And all of a sudden she's like, am I not? Right. And she said, and I guess my biggest fear is that then I'm also going to be found out. And then what? Like how hypocritical. And then I challenged her to say, but whose story is this? Is this your story or the story of the other woman? This other woman, the woman, like, whose story is this? Is it the story of people who are saying that? She said, no, it's my story. And I said, it's your story. Own it. Whatever comes, like for you, it was special. For you, it was challenging. It was creative because she also attributed a lot of her growth, her personal growth, to that relationship. Like in the last few months, she said he supported me in this and that and made me see this. And so it had its role. It had a challenging, creative role for her. And so she got a new job. It was just a whole thing based on this. So that's your story. That's your story. It's not, and it's unique and it's nobody else's. Come what may. Yeah. That's what I thought. That's what I believed in at the time. And
it's also, do you want to involve, like going back to that case where, do I disclose somebody else's story for them type thing? I remember having a huge struggle in the beginning of this venture, being like, I can't share a story that isn't my own, and being asked to share stories that weren't my own publicly, and feeling really like they need to double confirm, they need to triple confirm, like whether they actually want me to read this out loud on the internet. And finally, I came to terms with the fact that I wasn't sharing with malicious intent, and I wasn't sharing to take somebody down, and I wasn't doing it to give somebody else the upper hand. I was literally just reading something on the internet and no identifying details. Like, me creating content has been a total upheaval in really being able to discern the alignment between intention and impact. And when you just said that story about that girl having insight into somebody else's story and then being like, do I take this information and pass it to somebody else? Was it ever really your information in the first place?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't.
And
We get confused when we
like,
go through this villain hero cycle. We get really confused. Forget that there's our story and there's other people's stories. And we've got to be responsible for what our story is and our consequence, but nobody else's.
Yeah, and not getting it straight in other people's heads either. I remember people early on in this business feeling incredibly responsible for getting their story in other people's heads straight and getting the facts figured out or helping them with their comprehension. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're over here obsessing over a story that somebody else is telling themselves with a lot of inaccuracies. That is something that is totally outside of your control. And it's like expending this energy in this very reactive way, this fear of being found out for who you really are, when the story that they're telling is not who you are. And that being a really difficult jump for some people to make inside of their heads. How do you think people can get into the habit of practicing presence so that they're removed from the story that they're telling themselves?
I think it's practicing understanding that, again, I think our society wants us to be superhumans all the time, meaning we have to be perfect and great and the hero and the aesthetics of all this Instagram and social media. We are less, or I feel like we're less compassionate to ourselves in the sense that we always have to be the good guy. Even in politics, you see that. It's really a discussion about who's the good guy. The good guy. We're not like, no, nobody's the good guy because we're humans. Let's start there. There's no such thing as I'm the good guy. That becomes a whole thing, that your whole identity as well. So you are incapable of holding any part of you that is dissonant of that narrative that but I'm really a good person. There's such a pressure, again, in society nowadays to be a good person, like a respectful person and politically correct and all this. Oh, I have empathy with everybody. I'm an empath. Everybody's an empath. Stop it. Like, we all have empathy to, yes, some of us can exercise it more, but the minute that it's, again, about you and how you're good, you're not really being empathetic. No, you're not. Like, you have to be empathetic first with yourself, with knowing that you will fuck up and you will mess things up. And guess what? And you'll learn it and you'll say you're sorry. And you will also, that liberates you to understand that people might see you as the villain, but not claim your whole identity over that. Because again, you know that you're much more complex than that. Why is it that we need this validation, this very reductionist, again, and some people might need to have you as their villain in their story. Very well. Let them have that's like that book. What's her name? That the famous
Mel Robbins.
Yeah. Didn't you read a book, Let Them? And I hadn't read it. I hear myself say it all the time. And I'm thinking that's where she's going. Let them have their story. And why do you have to internalize it and then also try to prove to the whole world that's not the case? Maybe it is the case. Maybe it is a case that you were the villain in this moment, meaning you hurt somebody. Okay. Or you were the villain in the sense that you were disoriented or confused or you didn't know what to do or you saw it's just, yes, that happened, right? And now you're reflecting about it. You're an adult now, the consequences of what you're doing and go from there and own your story. Yeah, I did. I was involved. It was special until it wasn't, kind of thing, because it was.
Yeah. I do think that in order for you to step out of the paradigm of dysfunction, it does require radical self-acceptance.
Yes.
And the radical self-acceptance is also looking at the parts of you that you are inclined to say, oh, that isn't me, but you did it. And it's, I do actually have to love that part of myself too. That part of myself brought me to where I am today, type thing. and the inclination to reject certain parts of yourself. It does just put you right back into that victim, villain, hero mindset of, oh, I need to go look outside of myself.
And mentalizes your identity as well inside, not only outside, but inside, as if, there's a villain in you. And that actually leads to a lot of the behavior that we do see in infidelity. It leads to a lot of the behavior that we see in escapism. And infidelity, I think, is the first infidelity is within yourself. When you are unable to hold all these spaces, right? And you don't let them talk to each other. So you compartmentalize the villain in you, and you have this affair and you have this whole other life that nobody knows of, and then you can be the hero publicly. But the villain in you has got to come out somewhere. You start dissociating. And the more you dissociate, the more toxic it becomes. The more you're not living a full life, the more, you're more likely to have chronic affairs, or the more likely you're going to use substances to numb that part of you or escape in some other way. Because again, infidelities show up in many ways, and it's not just by having another person on the side, so to speak. It's also having other
infidelity.
vices.
Somebody asked me to explain what I thought infidelity was, and I was like, infidelity is literally the lack of fidelity. It is having secrets either from yourself or from people that love you. And I truly don't think that anybody can love you until you learn to love yourself. Otherwise, it's based on a false reality or a presentation of sorts that you're putting out there. Like, it's manicured, it's tailored, curated. But I do think that you're right on with saying that the infidelity exists within you before it ever is acted upon. And it is the secrets that you're not willing to uncover about yourself.
Parts of you that you're not willing to show, exactly, that you're not willing to show either in your marriage or with your family or in your life. It's the parts of you that you're not willing to show, and to show sometimes yourself. But these parts will show up. They will, because they're there to be lived as well, or else we don't live.
I just got the chills. I fucking love that so much. It does. I do think that it comes down to like radical honesty. Radically honest with yourself about what it is that you want to experience in life. And instead of staring at those aspects of yourself with disdain, but you look at those aspects of yourself with sincere curiosity and wonder. Otherwise, you're just going into the analysis of how can I pathologize this piece of me and get it corrected so that it never shows up again, when really like that part of yourself is just dying to be seen by you. I think that's how we come alive.
Yeah. I think that, then disclaimer here, I think in the sense that you said the radical honesty, I agree with that. However, I do think that, because the counter argument can be, oh, if you want radical honesty, weren't you honest with your husband?
Why
weren't you radically honest?
Yeah.
Talk about radically honest. And being radically honest doesn't mean that you'll know everything about yourself all the time. And that's why curiosity, like I said, curiosity is key. And curiosity will save you every time, because you don't know everything about yourself. You don't. And sometimes being radically honest is also understanding that, wow, I don't know this part of me, because you only know until it doesn't happen from one day to the next. I am thrown into an unknown situation or an unknown relationship. It takes a little bit of time to understand, but the radically honest is to say, okay, I don't know what I'm feeling. This is what radical honesty feels and looks like. And if that happens, then also you don't pathological. I'm having trouble here with the English today.
Okay.
You don't make logical. And so what that means is that, for example, my affair took not even 7 months. Right. And then yours, I think it was 3 months, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, dude. It was such a small amount of time because I didn't need much of the experience to prove to myself that the reality I had initially placed myself in, which was the marriage and the partner that I had, wasn't enough for me.
But there you go. That was radical honesty. you are able to understand this, be curious about this, and then say, oh, this is what I want. And so I'm going to take action based on that. But if you're not able to be radically honest about what's going on, then you start making excuses, compartmentalizing. And yes, it starts becoming pathological and it'll take years. Not to say that, again, one affair is better than the other, but to live a life where you do compartmentalize a portion of your life where it's not public, it's shamed, it is logical in that way. It is not radical honesty with a full life, with a full lived life. Yeah.
And the thing is, like, most people inside of affairs that I've spoken with very much desire the fullness of life, and they feel hindered by the circumstance. And I think that when you feel that way, you are the one who has to determine your own path forward. And radical honesty doesn't require you to disclose to anybody else except for yourself.
Yes.
And that's the other thing. Telling someone your story doesn't necessarily mean you're honest. Like, being honest is that draw into sincere curiosity of, why do I feel this way?
Mhm.
And what is this feeling? And what does this feeling mean to me? Not what is the definition, but like meaning, and being able to really uncover meaning in your own life. That was a really long-winded monologue on radical honesty doesn't demand
You put it really well.
you putting yourself in tricky waters.
Yeah. And why is it that people, going back to the triangle, where is it that when we enter an affair and spend 20 years, 10 years in an affair, saying that we want a full life, but still in it?
I have an idea, but it's also not for me to answer. It's for the person that's listening to answer. And I do think that we move through these triangles. It's not like all of a sudden you ascend and you're there. Like, there are seasons of life where you end up back in those pitfalls, whatever, identities, not even identities, experiences, really. I experience being the villain because I am telling myself the story that I am the villain. I experience being the hero, right? And those are all motivated by different emotions until I think you declare the meaning of those emotions and which emotion you really want motivating your decisions, and being really decisive about that. It just catapults you forward, I think.
I agree. However, I think that there is, when you do have radical self-acceptance, not all the time, like you said, there's going to be a moment where you're like, you're struggling with yourself. But if that's your north, right, and your orienting movement, to accept, to surrender to what is within and without, you don't get stuck there, but you live in that red triangle in a shorter time frame, more. So, like you said, because you said, not identity, experience, and that's the whole difference. That's the whole difference. You understand that's an experience. You said it yourself. Okay, I'm having an experience that I'm a villain right now. Why? I feel guilty, and this is normally when guilt comes in. It's normally you're telling yourself that you're a villain, or you're afraid that you're the villain. But
And I do think you become what you tell yourself you are.
Yes.
Kind of like what you were saying about when we live in the space of we think we're the villain, we just become more and more of it. Like, it's that self-fulfilling prophecy of like,
because
I am
we're
the
trying to
villain.
compensate not being a villain. And so we're acting like we have to compensate for our guilt again, because I am the villain, because I broke up a family. So walk all over me kind of thing. And that's just reinforcing the entire cycle. You're inviting everybody to the stage of those exact identities, right? So whenever I show up on the stage of life as a villain, you can bet your ass that the hero will stand up and the victim will stand up. But again, you have this goal of self-acceptance and you're aware of that. That cycle becomes a lot shorter. You're not stuck in it. It's a reflective cycle. It's an experience that you have. And again, it's information that you take with you after you've lived through that cycle to go into the present cycle, to take with your creator self. So again, why is it that I felt like a victim? What part of me felt like a child back there? What part of me was so triggered? What experience did this remind me of that I was so scared of? Oh, I get it. And then, so how can I create a better experience for me? How can I tell my child that I'm no longer there? How can I prove to my child that now we're an adult and we don't have to accept everything, or we don't have to stay stuck on that? So again, I think it is a big difference between hiding behind those identities and understanding them as experiences, cyclical experiences.
Yeah, it is definitely an experience. And I think it's really cool to experience all of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's really cool to be a human because you do get to have the totality of the human experience. And when we started off this episode, we talked about this is really moving through the different mindsets, that because you experienced something where you were the victim, it doesn't mean you have to identify as a victim for the rest of your life. And if I'm like huge on content ingestion, and I think when you consume content that is heavily based in the paradigm of this one right here, hero, villain, victim.
Seductive content, which is very seductive content. Yeah.
It's seductive content. Tell me about that. Why do you think it's seductive?
Because
If you are the other woman in your relationship and you love this podcast, you would love the Other Women community. The Other Women community is a membership program designed to help other women just like you reclaim their relationship with themselves and heal from their affair. We provide a safe and supportive environment for you to open up and talk about your experiences. We give you the tools and resources you need to grow into an authentic, empowered individual. If you're ready to take the next step in your healing journey, head on over to theotherwomanandthewife.com/community to learn more about the membership and all it has to offer. All right, let's jump back into the episode.
it's so simplistic. And I think that, again, the limbic system would much rather this because it understands the world in black and white. It understands, oh, this is the threat. And if this is the threat and the villain, and this is, I know how to protect myself from it. And I know how to protect myself from pain. Again, if we go back to pain. So it's very seductive. Your limbic system is very seduced by fear. Fear has this illusion that you're actually in control. It's like, if you tell me what to fear, then I know how to control my world, kind of thing. And so that's why these hate talks and these narratives where we know who the enemy is so seductive in all of human history. It's very seductive because I'm relieved. Again, I know who the enemy is. I know where to position myself. I don't have to be in that gray zone, which is much, much more, it can be actually much more unsettling at first.
So I wonder, this makes me think, when does nuance become compelling for a person?
I think when you understand the freedom that comes with it, the absolute freedom that comes with it. And you're like, yes, it's scary. Yes, that I have to make my own choices. Yes, that I don't have to follow other people's formulas, or that I don't have to stay in this rigid role because God knows what role I'm going to play tomorrow. I don't know what role I'm going to play tomorrow, but the freedom that comes with it is so much better and much, again, in the creation, when you feel that you're creating your own life, there's nothing like it. It might feel unsettling at first because it is the unknown. It's much more known. It's much more seductive if you have the map that says, this is right, this is wrong, these are the villains, if you behave like this, you'll always be on this side. It's so seductive for the limbic system because it's simple, and we like simple things. We like simple things, especially the child in us likes simple things, because children are like that. Children are very black and white. That's why we love fairy tales. That's why it's very black and white, right? There's the wolf and there's little pigs. But then when we become an adult, that's where we enter the nuance.
It's so weird that this conversation has taken the path that it has, because I watched an old video I did back in early content creation days when I was sharing every single facet of my story. And I went and I found the letter that I wrote to my ex and read aloud to him. And in this letter, I had written, I just don't see what good there is in being good anymore. And that I felt like I was falling into a deep, dark hole, and I wanted all of it. I wanted to escape the predictability of what my life experience had become. And the affair was the route that I ended up taking. And I look back on that now with all of the knowledge that I have now, knowledge and wisdom, I will say. There is definitely a difference. And I'm like, she was so onto something, and she had no idea. And now I look around at my life and I'm like, praise that little girl who took the leap and went for it anyway. Because everything that was in black and white was telling me, no, don't do it. But I went ahead and I made the leap anyways. And the leap that I'm talking about is not that I moved forward into a relationship with Stan. The leap that I took was I refuse to lie anymore. Like,
Yes.
I
Radical.
can give an honest
That's
answer.
radical honesty. Yes. Yes.
Oh, and like, I am so grateful for that girl that I was, because she did all of a sudden lean into curiosity. She did start to depend on her own ability to think critically rather than trying to find answers outside of herself to explain herself to herself.
Yes, and I think there's an element there that you had, which was deep trust, which you said in the beginning of this podcast, which trust is such a big part of also being in that functional triangle and in the capacity. And I think it's a loop also, trust and capacity, because if you trust and then you see you have the capacity, you build capacity, and then you trust, you see what I'm saying? And that's how little children do. Like when they start walking, they're like, oh, I can move that step, and they just trust, and they see that there's the capacity, and then they evolve from that. And when we trust that we have the capacity to deal with whatever comes our way, we're unstoppable. We truly are.
Totally. I completely agree with that. And I believe that just touching on that topic of trust really quick, when you believe that you can't trust a person, the reframe that I started doing, and I don't know what compelled me to do this, but in order to take ownership of my life, it wasn't, I can't trust you. That line then became, I can't trust myself when I'm around you.
Yes.
And being able to pass that power back to myself rather than thinking that the power was something that I gave to them and then they ruined my power. Like, it was this total mindfuckery that I did with myself, where it led me to a place where I could depend on myself.
You're in that hood.
Oh,
Yeah. If your power is anywhere else, you are the victim because you're passive.
so good. You know what I can't stop thinking about? And I want to put it in this podcast. So I'm going to tell the listeners. Right before we started recording this episode, Carolina and I were just chitty chatting, and I was giving her a life update of mine. And I had told her about how one of the partners that I started the business with was walking away, and we've had all of this space and distance between us for a few months now. And it's really interesting to look back in hindsight at myself and be like, wow, what was I really doing? And Carolina hit me with this question, because I see this business as my fourth baby. And that I was going to create and bring this baby into the world with this other person that was partnering with me. And he was going to be around forever, and he was going to be the baby's daddy. And we were going to like birth this business together. And we ended up parting ways. And you validated and empowered me with one question, or one statement, actually. You said, it's very scary to become a single mother.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. Like, I still get chills even thinking about that moment. But at the same time, like, in my mind, single mothers are fucking rock stars.
Yeah.
And so in that statement, and you probably didn't have the context of how that statement would ring so hard and true for me. But yeah, in the story I was telling myself about this partnership dissolving, it was that I was going to be alone and that I couldn't do it. And there was this victim story that I was telling myself that was really just censoring the way that I showed up in the business, really.
Yes.
And now I feel fully empowered and like I'm getting back at things in my own Chelsea way, and I'm fucking the formula all over again. And it feels good. But yeah, that understanding that dysfunction.
It is also scary because I think also there's this lately, I think also in modern times, we have this idea that courage means that you're not afraid of something, or that there's no fear whatsoever, right? No, I'm 100% sure I don't fear it. No, you will fear it. And yet you'll have the capacity to still ride your fear and deal with it. And that's very important, I think, again, to maintain ourselves in that healthy presence and that healthy cycle. Yeah, I'm scared. Yeah, I'm scared, but I have the capacity, right? Yes, I'm scared. And a lot of people also with the infidelity content, we get a lot of, oh, you're going to pay, you will see, you're going to pay twice as much, right? It's just like, he will do the same thing to you. There's these comments that I find interesting because what they're really asking is don't leave that triangle. I cannot bear it that you will leave that triangle where you won't let me step on you and be the villain or the victim or whatever. Because that's what's really threatening, is that I'm not going to carry the shame. What they really are saying you're going to pay is, I want you to feel shame. And I'm not saying I'm not going to pay. I will pay. And I know that I will pay for consequences. It's not easy to have a blended family. It's not easy to do what we did. There's a lot of things financially and that sucks. That gets us scared, but there's no shame. And
There's no shame.
There's no shame because I understand that's the life I chose. And even though I'm not gleeful 100% of the time or in the clouds and happy. And that's another thing, like, oh, I hope it all was worth it and that you are happy all the time. Again, what's this? I know I'm not happy all the time, but this is the life that is coherent with me and my values and where I want to grow. And I am willing to pay the price.
The thing is, Carolina, it's because you're willing to go above status quo. Like I would say status quo is within that triangle of dysfunction, of being able to assign labels and roles to other people and doing it accurately. Because that's how a lot of people spend their time, right? Oh, you're going to pay for your choices. Like, God, those miserable comments, I'm so glad that isn't necessarily happening a lot in my comment section anymore. I turned on a feature finally in Instagram where the combative and the unhelpful dialogue actually just gets filtered out. So the constructive dialogue is now happening inside of the comment sections, which is really nice. And people are saying things like, wow, this was a really clear, accurate, and truthful explanation that my husband could never offer me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, you're welcome. I love being able to help people understand. And I think that has been the difference with this company. Is I didn't go into it for superficial reasons. I came into it with a lot of fire over infidelity content not being helpful towards the person who needed it. And that the approach of other creators was only perpetuating the cycle that existed prior to me having, I'll say, a wider wealth of understanding of how to embrace the human experience of life.
I think you bring in an important point, a very important point, which is what you said about the status quo or white society. The red triangle or the villain victim is a way of controlling society, of keeping society in its place. It's a way of making sure that that we don't have anarchy. It's true. And religions do that, right? Very well. The whole hero, or at least some religions do that very well, to have the villain and the hero, because it does, to a certain degree, maintain society very organized.
You mean predictable?
Yeah, predictable. Predictable might be a better word, because it's we know exactly. We don't have to second guess. Like we know everybody's place. We know everybody's place. And
We know what they're going to do next. We know what they're going to spend their money on next.
right.
We know what they're going to watch next. There is this air of superiority, I think, when you try to control the masses through mediums like that. So like reaching above status quo almost requires you to have that level of understanding of why a construct would want to control the people within it.
Yeah, you have to understand the matrix. So
You have to understand why other people would want you to make a different decision than the one that you're making today.
yeah, it's very threatening. Again, it's very threatening psychologically. It's threatening for society because then what? Then where does the predictability go? And or when they say, "Oh, but we're pro-family," everybody is pro-family. What are you talking?
But dude, yes.
Yes. But what you're talking about is a family that you know conventionally or that you like, that is predictable to you until, and then historically, if you see it, that changes all the time. The thing is that historically it would take thousands of years or 500 years. And now time is going a lot faster and changes happen a lot faster. And I think we as human are also resisting that. We're resisting that people have the amount of liberty that they do because we've never been so free. We've never been so free to at least in the Western world, especially developed countries. We've never been so free. And yet we still have this, this very old thinking of trying to control society because we're not there yet psychologically, maybe, right? We need to bring up the very archaic methods of control.
Yeah. And understand what their purpose really is and whether you're aligned with it or not. I seriously think that I will probably get a divorce just to get a divorce because I've been so grossed out by the story of marriage. I'm like, why am I even participating in this contract? I'll keep the relationship with Stan, no problem. I'll keep everything else the same, but I'll probably just like exit the institution of marriage because I'm pretty like centered on knowing that it is the individual's participation inside of a system that gives the system its power.
Okay.
And when a system has power, it can oppress the individuals within it. And so I think about that all the time. And I even told Stan, I was like, dude, can we get a divorce just like for shits and giggles? And the only thing that's really stopping us right now is if it costs money. And I'm like, oh, there's another system I'm participating in.
Sure, right. You're right. Even that, or the tax cuts, everything is giving value to this institution so that you can later also oppress it. Yeah, absolutely. As if this was the only platform. Did you have a wedding? Did you have a wedding?
Okay. So our wedding it's really crazy because my first wedding, I went balls to the wall, all out. My second wedding, we did it in our home and we had our neighbors come and we had our parents and our siblings and we did it on Thanksgiving because it was already going to be a day of feast. Or actually, I think we did it the day before Thanksgiving. So we called it Thanks Wedding. And I didn't even send out invitations. I created a Facebook event.
Right. That's nice. You start with gratitude. Like it
was and you know what's weird? This is really weird, but this happened on my personal Facebook just the other day. Somebody messaged me, like a personal friend from the past, and had asked me, hey, what was the song that you walked down the aisle to? And I was like, this is really weird. And I don't think this person knows what I do for a living right now. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I was like, you weren't at my wedding. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, they were at my first wedding. And I couldn't recall the name of the song. Like it had completely escaped my memory. I do remember being wedding planning and wanting to like create the most perfect event ever. And that I chose a song that had really powerful words in it. But I ended up like obsessing over the answer to this question, being like, why can't I even remember?
Why do you think you can remember? Did you answer that question?
why do I think I could? It just wasn't important to me anymore. It lost its importance over time. And
maybe
it wasn't something, or maybe it never was, but I finally went and I found the song. Anyways, you asked me about our wedding. Our wedding was really sweet and it was really intimate and it was last minute and it was very Stan and Chelsea. It wasn't for the guests. The only thing that was in it for me really was getting rid of any mom guilt that I felt for my children, because in my mindset at that point in time, it was you can't have children out of wedlock. But I had already had the baby and I was like, oh shit, she needs her parents to be married. I never even changed my last name. And I still catch heat about this to this fucking day. And the fact that I'm a different race than him. So like when we go to hotels and I'll like book the hotel under his name. I'll show up with my ID and I'm like, hey, yo, it's under my husband's name. And they're like, his last name is who? Your last name is Smallwood? I don't think so. I'm like, fuck you, dude. If we had the same last names, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but fine, whatever. So I did things so different the second time around. Really. That's good.
Yeah.
What about you? Did you guys have a big wedding?
So pretty much the same story, right? The first wedding was much bigger. I think his first wedding was also bigger. And then actually his second, because I'm his third wife.
Oh yeah, I'm Stan's third wife too. It's really cool.
So
I like being the third.
His first marriage, they had a very quick wedding because he was leaving the country, but then they didn't have kids. They got divorced pretty early on. And the second wedding was the big one, right? And also he had kids with her. And then we got married. We did two weddings, actually, me and him afterwards. And one was in Brazil because we needed, I think, and that's where I was going. It's funny that we talk about the institution marriage, but why do we do the rite of passage? Why is it so important for us to do that rite of passage where we say that besides the mom guilt, which I think that, at least for me, it wasn't a question, like an issue that it was guilt, but it was an issue that I wanted to step in the world's eye as this man being my husband. Right. I did want that recognition. And the first wedding was not legal because he wasn't legally divorced yet, because in Italy, it takes 2 years to get divorced.
Relationships just continue outside of like the institution of marriage.
But that's where you were going. This is ridiculous, right?
Yeah,
and I already had a child with him. So not only, in my daughter's birth certificate, I told you this, right? Then my daughter's
No,
birth
tell me again.
She has mother, me, divorced, father, my husband, married still. Like, who so married? That's their birth certificates. It said, oh, you can have that change, blah, blah, blah. And I said, whatever. I don't care. If she asked about that, I'll tell her the truth. We were a couple by then for already 2 years out of the closet, but it took your dad more than 2 years to get a divorce, because in Italy, it's 2 years. If it's friendly, if it's not, it used to be 4 years, by the way. In his first marriage, he had to wait 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, that's how much power the state has in Italy, or had, over your decisions.
And how much power does paperwork have over people, right? Like him being like, oh, we can get that changed. It literally makes no difference to me. And for the child, right? Imagine your child doesn't know the story, finds this document, puts pieces together, starts telling themselves a story that's actually yours. And this kind of just goes back to what we were saying earlier. But if my kid came up to me and had questions about my past, I'd be like, let's go, baby girl. Let's do a trip down memory lane really quick. And let me tell you about the time we were in flux. And I would get really real with her, because if she is at those crossroads as an adult, I want her to know that she can come to me. And I want to be able to display that level of, there's no reason for you to panic over things like this. and walk through the world in a really self-assured way. And I think that requires you talking about your past in a self-assured way too.
Yes. One difference between, I guess, my story and your story is that my kids went through it with me because I had kids and he had his kids, right? We both had kids from our marriages, and so they have asked me many questions progressively, and I've answered all of them. But, what I've always tried to also, one day she said, yeah, Mom, but you cheated, right? You cheated. And I said, I did. I cheated. How does that make you feel? So I put her, like, how does that make you feel that I cheated? Because so I guess you felt like, and then you see this like child try to make sense of all these words. And because if I didn't say it, she would have heard it for somebody else. If I hadn't owned my story again, if I hadn't owned my story and I hadn't put myself, yes, I'm the villain, or I'm ashamed, or I did cheat, but you're a dad, whatever. If I went into that triangle where I cheated because I'm the victim and your dad is the real perpetrator or whatever, right? I was the victim of this horrible marriage. No.
If you went to over-explain, you would never allow her to understand.
Exactly. So I think that's part of owning the story, is like leaving space to others also come in and react to your story, and not necessarily internalizing the other people's reactions. Yes, this is my story. This is what I had to do. I understand it makes you feel sad. And she has said, especially my daughter, not so much my son. I don't know if I told you the story, but once my son he's a character, my oldest one. But when the other day, when we were having a formal dinner with an authority, because we do have quite a few dinners at home, and sometimes the kids participate, which is nice because they're participating in these formal dinners. And so this person who was an authority asks us very nonchalantly, oh, so how did you two meet? Because again, we're also from different nationalities, right? He's Italian, I'm Austrian. And so my son goes, oh, he was married and she was married and they fell in love. Just like that. And my dad is totally okay with it now. His ex-wife is still not. But it's a big blended family. And that was his story. That was his narrative right there. And we were just didn't know how to react. But I thought it was, of course, it was this awkward moment. And Antonino just laughed and said, yes, I think Felipe summed it well. He understood that this story has no shame to it. This is what it is.
Understood. I love that.
Yeah. And he understood very well that
God, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall. And I really wish we could interview the other adults that were in the room when he said that, because to own your story in front of your kids and see them witness you without shame, I think is very powerful for the child, especially as they're coming of age. But for any of those adults who have, I'll say, unhealthy attachments to the idea of marriage, or if they are insecure in their own marriage, the things that like light up for them inside of their heads, which like we can see it in comment sections all the time. It's just so fascinating to go into that conversation with people. I was just at Nordstrom yesterday buying stuff for their treat, and a lady next to me was checking out, and they were like, oh, would you like us to ship this to the address that we have on file? And she goes, oh, actually, can you ship it to this address? It's my boyfriend's house. And she's standing there next to her daughter, and her daughter goes, Mom, like that, right? And I just bust up laughing. And I was like, oh God, if you guys knew what I did for a living, how funny that story is. And she goes, what do you do for a living? And I was like, oh, I actually talk to people who are in the midst of affairs. And I was just joking. I don't actually have a boyfriend. She became incredibly insecure in that moment. And I was like, no need to explain. I thought it was funny.
Like, don't put me there. Don't put me in that sack. Again, don't put me in that sack. They have nothing to do with these people. I have nothing to do with, and yet
I'm not like them.
But she can go there in fantasy, which means that, again, there's that part of her that's there. Yeah. And a lot of people might also say, when they hear a child say that, oh, but then you're not giving him moral guidance and he doesn't know right from wrong. And, with all these things that we hear. And what I say is, no, he knows that things have consequences. And that's what he has to know. He's not oblivion to the fact that there was hurt, but he sees, to the most part, that the adults around him are capable of dealing with that hurt. validating it, not pushing it under the rug, not there is hurt.
Grapple with it.
They can grapple it. Yes, I hurt. Or the opposite story would also be like, again, we shouldn't be afraid of intense feelings because they're there for a reason. They shouldn't be driving the car, but again, they're there for a reason. And my 7-year-old son has a best friend, and he absolutely loves his best friend. And they were in a school together, and my son had to move schools, so now they're not in the same school. Whenever I can, I do play dates with this kid and he comes out crying. I miss him so much. I miss him, and it's painful that I have to go, and all these things. And I say, wow, what a beautiful emotion you're having right now. I tell him, what a beautiful, look at this pain that you're feeling. It's because you really love him. It's like a sweet pain. And he goes, yeah, it is. All of a sudden, he has the tools. And again, this is a good mom moment. I'm not saying that I always have these, but at that moment, I could see how he was really soothed by the fact that even though it's painful, like it makes me feel alive. It makes me feel like I have a connection
appreciate
to this person, that this pain is telling me something. And from then on, he cries less, but he talks about it like, yeah, he's really important to me, Mom. So he knows what that pain represents, and not this whole thing, oh my God, it's painful and we've destroyed everything and we can't deal with it. And we can't, again, we go in victimhood and we can't deal with the fact that somebody has imposed this pain on us.
Or that we're experiencing the pain, or we need somebody else to solve it.
Yeah.
God, you and I should tell more personal stories for sure on the podcast. You want to know what Layla said the other day?
What?
Someone had asked, is anybody else joining you? And I think we were at like a dinner reservation or something. And I was like, yeah, my husband. And she goes, don't call him that. I was like, what? She goes, daddy, baby, don't call him your husband. I was like, okay, little girl. All right. I was like, does it make you uncomfortable? She was like, yeah.
Interesting.
She is a fascinating human being on this planet. And we can actually credit her with this entire venture because I wanted to model to her the importance of speaking your mind, especially when someone tried to silence you. And so like this venture was then born. Yeah, I freaking manifested that in my life. That's for sure. Jeez. And what did she say recently also that was like, it caught mine and Stan's attention. Like we looked at each other, like, what is going on? She had said, yeah, if either of you cheat on each other, I'm going to disown you. And I just stared at Stan because I know that she overhears a lot of business talk and like a lot of the stories and stuff. So this girl is going to have a wealth of the wisdom walking into relationships. But yeah, she like does these empty threats all the time, makes really accusatory statements.
Like
and
she's
like,
saying, this is all good and fun, but I'm not sure if I can deal with the pain.
Which that girl in pain, she is highly sensitive. Like when people ask who she is, she's, hey, I'm Layla and I'm sensitive. That's how she will identify.
Disclaimer.
Just so you know, don't fuck with me. That's basically her MO in life.
Could be like, I will cry or just slap you across the face. You don't know. Either way. I can go either way.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And I picked up that it's really interesting. I told this story to Julie and she was like, wow, you really are unique. And I want to tell it to you. I had bought these dogs for my kids on purpose because I thought I could control their first heartbreak and their first experience with death.
Where are you in your triangle?
I don't know. I'm probably all over it.
Oh, you're the hero.
Oh, am I?
You're the hero. You're going to...
I just wanted... It was almost like I was trying to orchestrate that they would experience grief while still in my midst so that I could walk them through it.
Yeah.
Walk with them through it type thing. And then Layla was really tight with my stepmom who had passed away unexpectedly at the age of 59. And when that happened, I was so pissed because I was like, God damn it. All I wanted to do was control her first experience with grief. And it's going to be this instead. It was really weird.
That's the hero's disappointment. Can you see that? That's the hero's disappointment because You had it all set out. This is how she's going to experience heartbreak. And now I can't control this. I can't control this.
I can't control this.
All I can do is be a responder, be a coach, be a creator. Okay, now given this situation, like what is she going to come with? And it's very hard. With motherhood, it's very hard for us to steer away from the hero experience because we want to rescue them all the time.
It was like I experienced profound grief unexpectedly. And I almost always anticipate grief as soon as I find an experience I love. Like I already know that this is going to be
how it's going to, like me when I start a vacation, I'm like, I know it's going to end, and I'm just already grieving the end of my holiday.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's funny because I'll jump into that, add to that we often as mothers want to be the hero of the wounds that we had. We want to rescue our own wounds in our children. Most of the time, that's what it is. I know that grief was so bad for me, so I'm going to make this experience better. And we do it unconsciously.
Or even prevent the same wound
prevent the same
from occurring.
Yeah. And as if, this is so crazy, as if she has the exact same life as you, the same variables. And for you to control the experience, that's the whole idea of a controlled experiment, is that you have the same variables across all sets. You have the same setting. There's no differentiation. So you cannot ever translate your life experience or your wounds or even your gains. You know, for me, Girl Scout was such an amazing experience. She's going to do Girl Scout, or she's going to do the piano or whatever. And it's so much harder to just step back and really be the observer of what is this little being going to bring? What the unknown, what we were saying, the creator, the unknown, the nuance of the gray. It's all over. Like you said, we move constantly through.
Yeah. Okay, we went way over. This was really effortless.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast episode. We appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you've made it this far, you're likely someone who is invested in the journey of being the other woman. We understand that this can be a difficult and complex experience, which is why we offer guided coaching to help you heal and move forward. We encourage you to explore the links in the episode description or visit theotherwomanandthewife.com/coaching to learn more about our exclusive coaching program and apply today. Thank you again for your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.